The Office is an American television comedy series that aired on NBC from March 24, 2005 to May 16, 2013. It is an adaptation of the BBC series of the same name. The Office was adapted for American audiences by Greg Daniels, a veteran writer for Saturday Night Live, King of the Hill, and The Simpsons. It is co-produced by Daniels Dee Productions and Rivali Productions, in association with Universal Television. The original executive producers were Greg Daniels, Howard Klein, Ben Silverman, Ricky Gervais, and Stephen Merchant, with numerous others being promoted in later seasons. The series depicts the everyday lives of office employees in the Scranton, Pennsylvania branch of the fictional Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. To simulate the look of an actual documentary, it is filmed in a single-camera setup, without a studio audience or a laugh track. The show debuted on NBC as a mid-season replacement and ran for 9 seasons, and 201 episodes. The Office features Steve Carell, Rainn Wilson, John Krasinski, Jenna Fischer, Jay Novak, Ed Helms, and James Spader on the main cast. The first season of The Office was met with mixed reviews, but the following 4 seasons received widespread acclaim from television critics, and were included on several critics' year-end top TV series lists, winning several awards including 4 Primetime Emmy Awards, including Outstanding Comedy Series in 2006. While later seasons were criticized for a decline in quality, earlier writers oversaw the final season and ended the show's run with a positive reception. Production crew list of showrunners throughout the series run: Season 1 to 4, Greg Daniels; Season 5 to 6, Paul Lieberstein and Jennifer Chalotta; Season 7 to 8, Paul Lieberstein; Season 9, Greg Daniels. Greg Daniels served as the senior series showrunner for the first 4 seasons of the series and developed the British series for American television. He then left the position when he co-created the comedy series Parks and Recreation with fellow Office writer Michael Shaw and divided his time between the 2 series. Paul Lieberstein and Jennifer Chalotta were named the series showrunners for the 5th season. Chalotta left the series after the 6th season and Lieberstein stayed on as showrunner for the following 2 seasons. He left the showrunner spot after the 8th season for the potential Dwight Schrute spin-off, The Farm, which was eventually passed up by NBC. Daniels returned to the showrunner position for the 9th and final season. Other executive producers include cast members B.J. Novak and Mindy Kaling. Kaling, Novak, Daniels, Lieberstein and Shaw made up the original team of writers. Kaling, Novak and Lieberstein also serve multiple roles on the series, as they play regular characters on the show, as well as write, direct and produce episodes. Credited with 24 episodes, Kaling is the most prolific writer on the staff. Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant, who created the original British series, are credited as executive producers, and wrote the pilot and the 3rd season episode, The Convict. Merchant later directed the episode, Customer Survey, while Gervais appeared in the episodes, The Seminar, and Search Committee. Randall Einhorn is the most frequent director of the series, with 15 credited episodes. The series has also had several guest directors, including Lost co-creator J.J. Abrams, Buffy the Vampire Slayer creator Joss Whedon, both of whom are fans of the series, and filmmakers Jon Favreau, Harold Ramis, Jason Reitman, and Mark Webb. Episodes have been directed by several of the actors on the show including Steve Carell, John Krasinski, Rainn Wilson, Ed Helms, and Brian Baumgartner. Development and writing. Before the series aired its 2nd episode, the writers spent time researching in offices. This process was used for Daniels' other series King of the Hill and Parks and Recreation. The pilot is a direct adaptation of the first episode of the British version. Daniels had decided to go this route because completely starting from scratch would be a very risky thing to do, due to the show being in adaptation. He had briefly considered using the idea for The Dundies as the pilot episode. After the writers knew who the cast was, they were allowed to write for the actors, which allowed the show to be more original for the following episode, Diversity Day. Following the mixed reaction towards the first season, the writers attempted to make the series more optimistic, and to make Michael Scott more likable. They also established the supporting characters of the series more, giving them actual personalities. And they made the lights in the office brighter, which allowed the series to differentiate itself from the British version. A common problem with the scripts, according to Novak, is that they tend to run too long for the regular 22-minute time slot, leading to several cuts. For example, the script for the episode, Search Committee, was initially 75 pages, 10 pages too long. A complete script is written for each episode. However, actors are given opportunities to improvise during the shooting process. Fisher said, "Our shows are 100% scripted. They put everything down on paper, but we get to play around a little bit, too." Steve and Rain are brilliant improvisers. This leads to a large number of deleted scenes with almost every episode of The Office, all of which are considered part of the show's canon and storyline by Daniels. Deleted scenes have sometimes been restored in repeats to make episodes longer or draw back people who have seen the episode before to see the bonus footage. In an experiment, a deleted scene from The Return was made available over NBC.com and iTunes, explaining the absence of a character over the next several episodes. Daniels hoped that word of mouth among fans would spread the information, but eventually considered the experiment a failure. Casting. According to Jenna Fisher, the series used an unusual casting process which did not involve a script. The producers would ask the actors several questions and they would respond as the characters they were auditioning for. NBC programmer Kevin Riley originally suggested Paul Giamatti to producer Ben Silverman for the role of Michael Scott, but the actor declined. Martin Short, Hank Azaria, and Bob Odenkirk were reported to be interested in the part. In January 2004, Variety reported that Steve Carell, of the popular Comedy Central program The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, was in talks to play the role. At the time, he was already committed to another NBC mid-season replacement comedy, Come to Papa, but the series was quickly cancelled, leaving him fully committed to The Office. Carell later stated that he had only seen about half of the original pilot episode of the British series before he auditioned. He did not continue watching for fear that he would start copying Gervais' characterizations. Other people who were considered or auditioned for the role included Ben Falcone, Alan Tudyk, Jim Zulovich, and Paul F. Tompkins. Rainn Wilson was cast as power-hungry sycophant Dwight Schrute, and he watched every episode of the series before he auditioned. Wilson had originally auditioned for Michael, a performance that he described as a terrible Ricky Gervais impersonation. However, the casting directors liked his audition as Dwight much more and hired him. Seth Rogen, Matt Besser, Patton Oswalt, and Judah Friedlander also auditioned for the role. John Krasinski and Jenna Fisher were virtually unknown before being cast in their respective roles as Jim and Pam, the central love interests. Krasinski had attended school with B.J. Novak, and the two were friends. Fisher prepared for her audition by looking as boring as possible, creating the original Pam hairstyle. In an interview on NPR's Fresh Air, Fisher recalled the last stages of the audition process for Pam and Jim, with the producers partnering the different potential Pams and Jims together to gauge their chemistry. When Fisher finished her scene with Krasinski, he told her that she was his favorite Pam, to which she reciprocated that he was her favorite Jim. Adam Scott and John Cho both auditioned for the role of Jim, and Kathryn Hahn also auditioned for the role of Pam. The supporting cast includes actors known for their improv work: Angela Kinsey, Kate Flannery, Oscar Nunez, Leslie David Baker, Brian Baumgartner, Melora Hardin, and David Denman. Kinsey had originally auditioned for Pam. The producers thought she was too feisty for the character, but they called her back for the part of Angela Martin, which she won. Flannery first auditioned for the part of Jan Levinson Gould, before landing the role of Meredith Palmer. Baumgartner originally auditioned for Stanley, but was eventually cast as Kevin. Ken Kwapis, the director of the pilot episode, liked the way Phyllis Smith, a casting associate, read with other actors auditioning so much that he cast her as Phyllis. At the beginning of the third season, Ed Helms and Rashida Jones joined the cast as members of Dunder Mifflin Stamford, while Jones would later leave the cast for a role on Parks and Recreation. In February 2007, NBC announced that Helms was being promoted to a series regular. 4 of the show's writers have also performed in front of the camera. B.J. Novak was cast as reluctant temp Ryan Howard after Daniels saw his stand-up act. Paul Lieberstein was cast as Human Resources Director Toby Flenderson on Novak's suggestion after his cold readings of scripts. Greg Daniels was originally unsure where to use Mindy Kaling on screen in the series until the opportunity came in the script for the second episode, Diversity Day, where Michael needed to be slapped by a minority. "Since that slap, I've been on the show," says Kaling. Michael Shaw has also made occasional appearances as Dwight's cousin Mose, and consulting producer Larry Wilmore has played diversity trainer Mr. Brown. Plans were made for Mackenzie Crook, Martin Freeman, and Lucy Davis, from the British version of The Office, to appear in the third season, but those plans were scrapped due to scheduling conflicts. Filming The Office was filmed with a single camera set up in a cinema verite style simulating the look of an actual documentary, with no studio audience or laugh track, allowing its deadpan and absurd humor to fully come across. The primary vehicle for the show is that a camera crew has decided to film Dunder Mifflin and its employees, seemingly around the clock. The presence of the camera is acknowledged by the characters, especially Michael Scott, who enthusiastically participates in the filming. The characters, especially Jim and Pam, also look towards the camera when Michael creates an awkward situation. The main action of the show is supplemented with talking head interviews or confessionals, with the characters speaking one-on-one with the camera crew about the day's events. In order to get the feel of an actual documentary, the producers hired cinematographer Randall Einhorn, who is known for directing episodes of Survivor, which allowed the show to have the feel of rough and jumpy, like an actual documentary. According to producer Michael Shaw, the producers to the series would follow the documentary format strictly. The producers would have long discussions over whether a scene could work under the documentary format. For example, in the fourth season episode, Did I Stutter?, a scene featured Michael going through a long process to go to the bathroom and not pass by Stanley. The producers debated whether that was possible, and Einhorn walked through the whole scene in order to see if a cameraman could get to all the places in time to shoot the whole scene. Despite the strict nature in the early years of the series, later seasons seem to have loosened the rules on the format, with the camera crew often going into places that actual documentary crews would not, which also changed the writing and comedy style of the series. This inconsistency has received criticism from critics and fans. Music: the theme song for The Office was written by Jay Ferguson and performed by the Scrantones. It is played over the title sequence, which features scenes of Scranton, various tasks around the office and off, and the main cast members. Some episodes of the series use a shortened version of the theme song. Starting with the fourth season, the theme song is played over the closing credits, which previously rolled in silence. The exteriors of buildings in the title sequence are actual buildings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and were shot by cast member John Krasinski. The mockumentary format of the show contains no laugh track, and most of the music is diegetic, with songs either sung or played by the characters or heard on radios, computers, or other devices. However, songs have been played during montages or the closing credits, such as Tiny Dancer by Elton John and Islands in the Stream by Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Featured music tends to be well known, and often songs reflect the character, such as Michael's attempt to seem hip by using Mambo No. 5, and later, My Humps, as his cell phone ringtone. Daniels has said that it does not count as film score as long as it already appeared in the episode. Characters. The Office employs an ensemble cast. Many characters portrayed by The Office cast are based on the British version of the show. While these characters normally have the same attitude and perceptions as their British counterparts, the roles have been redesigned to better fit the American show. The show is known for its generally large cast size, with many of its actors and actresses known particularly for their improvisational work. Steve Carell stars as Michael Scott, regional manager of the Dunder Mifflin Scranton branch. Loosely based on David Brent, Gervais, a character in the British version, Scott is a well-intentioned man whose attempts at humour, while seemingly innocent to himself, often offend his peers and employees, and in some situations lead to reprimanding from his superiors. Rainn Wilson portrays Dwight Schrute, who, based upon Gareth Keenan, is a salesman and the assistant to the regional manager, a fictional title created by Michael. John Krasinski portrays Jim Halpert, a salesman and, in later seasons, co-manager who is often known for his wittiness and his hijinks on Schrute. Halpert is based upon Tim Canterbury, and is known to have feelings for Pam, the receptionist. Pam, played by Jenna Fisher, is based on Dawn Tinsley. She is shy but in many cases a cohort with Jim in his pranks on Dwight. BJ Novak portrays Ryan Howard, who for the first 2 seasons is a temporary worker, but is promoted to sales representative in the 3rd season and later ascends to the position of vice president, Northeast Region and Director of New Media until his treachery was exposed for corporate fraud and he was fired, ending up again as the temporary worker at the Scranton branch. The accounting department features Angela Martin, an admitted uptight and often hypocritical Christian who wishes to keep things orderly and make sure situations remain as serious as possible. Kevin Malone, a lovable but dim-witted man who revels in juvenile humor and frequently indulges himself with gambling and M&Ms, and Oscar Martinez is intelligent but often patronizing, in whose homosexuality and Hispanic heritage made him a favorite target for Michael's unintentional off-color comments. Rounding out the office are the stern salesman Stanley Hudson, who barely stood for Michael's constant references to his Black American heritage, eccentric quality assurance representative Creed Bratton, the kind and caring saleswoman Phyllis Lappin Vance, who marries Bob Vance from Vance Refrigeration across the hall from the office. Andy Bernard is a salesman introduced in Season 3 after the closing of the Stamford, Connecticut branch of Dunder Mifflin and the merging of the two. The bubbly and talkative customer service representative Kelly Cooper, the promiscuous alcoholic supply relations representative Meredith Palmer, human resources representative Toby Flenderson, who is admittedly hated by, and often the target of abuse by Michael Scott, warehouse foreman Daryl Philbin, warehouse dock worker and Pam's ex-fiancé Roy Anderson, who was fired in the 3rd season, and Michael's former love interest and former vice president for regional sales for Dunder Mifflin Jan Levinson. Toward the end of Season 5, bubbly and naive new receptionist Erin Hannon is introduced as Pam's replacement. A story arc at the end of Season 4 has Holly Flax transferred to the office as Toby's replacement. She acts as a love interest for Michael, as they share very similar personalities. Joe Bennett is the CEO of Sabre and Gabe Lewis, introduced in the middle of Season 6, is a Sabre employee who is assigned to the Dunder Mifflin Scranton branch as the regional director of sales. In Season 9, Clark Green and Pete Miller joined as two new customer service representatives to attempt to catch up on the ignored customer services complaints that Kelly had dismissed while she worked at Dunder Mifflin. Initially, the actors who portray the other office workers were credited as guest stars before they were named series regulars during the second season. The show's large ensemble has been mainly praised by critics and led to the series winning 2 Screen Actors Guild Award for Outstanding Performance by an Ensemble in a Comedy Series. Carell was reportedly paid $175,000 per episode starting with the third season. Krasinski and Fisher were paid around $20,000 for the beginning of the series. Starting with the fourth season, the two started getting paid around $100,000 per episode.